Hello.
Our story begins at the end of the training of Jedi Padawan Qui Gon Jinn. His master believed he was ready to become a Jedi Knight. What Master Dooku was unaware of was the fact that Qui-Gon had fallen in love with an outsider. Qui-Gon's homeworld of Coruscant was filled with people of all walks of life, and it was one of these individuals who would bring a young boy into the galaxy. His son's name, Anakin. While the boy was a Jinn, Qui-Gon knew he couldn't forgo his name to another. Unlike Master Mundi, he wasn't saving his race, so Qui-Gon and his partner came up with another name, one that Qui-Gon believed would fit the boy, which was Skywalker. It was derived from the Chiss explorers, what they like to call Skywalkers. These individuals helped navigators safely move along dangerous hyperspace routes. In Qui-Gon's mind, the name was fitting, because he believed the child would light people's paths. The whole situation was complicated. An outside relationship for a Jedi was forbidden. Having children weren't, per se, but it definitely wasn't encouraged. This put Qui-Gon into an awkward position. He was able to do a midichlorian count on the child and discover that through some gift of the Force, young Anakin was gifted with powers unlike any other individual, an M count higher than that of any individual sentient Qui-Gon had ever come across. What he was unaware of was the fact that the Force itself was working through Qui-Gon to do this. There was a growing darkness, one that the Jedi were unaware of, and there was of course Qui-Gon, the perfect father. By the will of the Force, they could see that Dooku was too emotionally charged to take the responsibility. The Jedi were too out of touch to properly handle a true chosen one, but Qui-Gon was in the middle. He was the maverick Jedi who did what was necessary, even if it went against the Jedi Code, and he would make the perfect father. As Anakin was selected to be the chosen one, Qui-Gon was tasked with the burden of being his son's guide. Everything went soundly for Qui-Gon and his spouse. Her name was Suna. She lived in the upper levels, not quite a senator, but the owner of a luxury shop in the financial district. How they met was simply odd circumstances, but one of her workers had been stealing from her and delivering to his boss. The Jedi weren't brought in, but their paths crossed when Jinn and Dooku were searching for some other criminal. They put the boss, the worker, and the crime leader in prison all at the same time. It was the foundation of the bond between Qui-Gon and Suna. Due to Qui-Gon being a Jedi Knight, he had more freedom. Not that Dooku wasn't free with him, but as a Knight, he could do things without informing his instructor. Jinn would spend time with his partner, and eventually that led to Anakin. They discussed if the child would be permitted into the Jedi Order at one point or another, and they both agreed that he wouldn't. While Qui-Gon could teach him, Anakin would be subject to emotionless training that was encouraged by the Order. That was something Suna and Qui-Gon did not want to introduce their child to. As the year of 58 BBY went by, the same year that Anakin was born, a drastic change infected the Jinn family. Due to her luxury shop having irritated thugs from the lower levels of the city, when the boss was freed from prison, he wanted revenge. In the middle of the night, her shop was raided, and due to her living above the shop, she went to Anakin's room to defend him, as she contacted Qui-Gon. Suna barricaded the door to Anakin's room and grabbed an artifact that she wasn't selling on the house floor. It was a pike from Shili, used by Togruta hunters of the past, just something that exceedingly affluent people of the city liked to own, for no reason. She was locked in the room as the criminals barged through the door to attack her. Suna had training with Qui-Gon, for fun, but she was able to kill the first intruder before the crime boss shot her. The commotion woke Anakin up, and his crying echoed out over the room as his mother was killed, and the crime boss came in to finish off his revenge. As he was doing this, a lightsaber ignited, and the criminals turned around, opening fire on the Jedi Knight, who defended the shots and killed each of the criminals, including their boss. When Qui-Gon ran into Anakin's room to make sure Suna and Anakin were alright, he saw a horrific sight. His beloved partner died. He held her momentarily before running over to Anakin's crib to see if he was alive, and luckily, he was. Qui-Gon cherished Anakin's survival, but would have to break the promise he and Suna made about Anakin's training. By this point, it was clear that Anakin was likely the chosen one, and he did respect the wishes of his partner, but his only options now were to leave the Jedi Order to raise Anakin, or put him in an orphanage and hope he didn't get dragged into a crime ring. Qui-Gon's philosophy was that he chose the Jedi because they were the light. That was his goal, to serve the light, and because he believed in the Jedi, not the Order or the Code, but the concept, he decided he would break the promise to Suna. He did feel terrible about it, and it really hurt him, but it would provide the best life for Anakin and himself. They'd be guaranteed housing, food, comfort, and proper healthcare. Plus, Qui-Gon himself could be present for Anakin all the time, having established a trauma bond with a boy, if you will. It wasn't uncommon for Jedi to become attached due to a tragic event. If a teacher saved a child from chaos, typically that teacher would instruct the child as their own Padawan. It was a strong bond, almost parental in every way, but never addressed as such. Qui Gon would also confide in his master about these events. Dooku was surprised, but he was glad that Qui Gon was honest with him. The young boy had always been a maverick, and he was glad that Qui Gon took after him. As for young Skywalker, it was decided that Dooku and Qui Gon would look after him in the years that followed. When Anakin Skywalker was 10, his father was ready to take him on as his first student. Qui Gon decided to wait instead of becoming a master because he didn't want anyone else taking on the responsibility of raising his son. While Dooku and Qui Gon were very invested in Skywalker's training, he was a top member of his class. He was one of the youngest Jedi brought into the Order, being brought in when he was only about 5 months old, but this aided him tremendously. He did have memories of that night, and his father told him everything he could, so that Anakin was able to understand and emotionally grasp what it was that happened. However, there was one very large detail that Qui Gon never told his son. Qui Gon and Dooku agreed that Anakin shouldn't know who the father was until he was finished his youngling training. It was a moment that should be shared between master and apprentice, not Jedi teacher and youngling. Anakin's years as a youngling were very productive for him. Despite being the top of his class, he had humility, courage, kindness, and compassion. He was what every Jedi dreamed of being, and he excelled at most of everything. There were some aspects of studying that he didn't do well in, but it was Anakin who encouraged one of the students that fell behind the most to overcome their failures. Anakin wasn't like most top-of-the-class students. He actually looked after those who fell behind. This wasn't taught to Anakin, just something that naturally was good about him. Having the opportunity to be trained from birth just gave him the extra incentive to be himself, without having to try and play catch-up. The student he was helping was a boy that was born a couple months after him. Young Obi-Wan Kenobi was a struggling student. He was one of those kids who didn't peak in their adolescence. He worked harder than anyone else in his class. Something just didn't click for him. This wasn't uncommon for Jedi, but typically, individuals that didn't have that click by the time of their Padawan years would usually be removed from the Order. There was a ton of worry for young Kenobi, but his older friend, Anakin, was able to help him. The two of them were like best friends. Skywalker was considered semi-popular because he was wizard with the Force. Many council members oversaw Skywalker's development, but this action by Anakin, one that was observed but never individually encouraged, told every Jedi that Skywalker would be the best of them. This bond between Obi-Wan and Anakin made them almost like brothers, and because Anakin was so close to Obi-Wan, it put him on the radar for Dooku and Qui Gon. Dooku was fairly adamant by this point that he had no intention to train another student. The year was 48 BBY, and he was getting older. He was 54 years old after all. Training another would be a lot for him. But Qui Gon encouraged it, thinking it might help Dooku with some of his still present darker tendencies. Dooku still showed a lot of darkness, and he was very unhappy with the Republic and the Jedi. Qui Gon totally understood this, but he also wanted Dooku to be happy, and he watched how much joy the oversight of Anakin brought him. Dooku loved hanging around young Skywalker, so realistically it didn't take a lot of convincing. Anakin helped Obi-Wan catch up to the rest of the class before he was pulled out. Most Jedi didn't get pulled out of youngling instruction until the years of 12, 13, 14, and maybe 15. But Anakin, at 10, was already far beyond most of anyone in those classes, even exceeding that of Padawans in their late teens. His natural talent was such a gift, and because he was taught to be open to it, the Force flowed through him like an ocean. One of Anakin's teachers always spoke about Anakin in comparison to the rest of the class. Anakin wasn't stronger. That wasn't how the Force worked. The Force could be a trickle, a stream, a river, a flood for anyone who can sense it. Anakin was like an ocean, but the instructor encouraged the students to think of themselves like a door. The wider one opens, the more easily the Force may flow through you. To encourage the class, the instructor reminded everyone that some people just start out with their doors more open than others. This was true for Obi-Wan in the sense that his door wasn't that open, and thanks to his friend, he was able to keep up with his peers as Skywalker became an apprentice. Qui Gon selected him, and he had first dibs because he rescued Skywalker from that little hellhole in the financial district, though there was one thing Anakin wanted to change before he became a Padawan. He didn't know this, but his father named him Skywalker with a hyphen between Sky and Walker, because for the Chiss, it wasn't just one name. If you have the subtitles on, you saw this. Now, I explain it. Qui Gon never thought it would be an issue to use a hyphen, but Anakin, at around the age of 7, started to dislike it. Obi-Wan didn't have a hyphen, Qui-Gon didn't have one. Ki-Adi-Mundi did, which kinda defeated the point, but he still wanted to get rid of his. So Anakin decided to become just Skywalker, without the hyphen. Qui-Gon never had an issue with it. Suna gave him a hard time about the hyphen too, but she came around to it shortly before her death. So in a way, everything came full circle for young Skywalker. Qui-Gon began instruction with Anakin, but nothing was really different for them. For the last 10 years, Jinn was very hands-on with Skywalker's training. So now that he was his student, it wasn't like anything really changed for the two of them. It was very simply a continuation of the previous bond, just with an official title. Qui-Gon was worried about when he might tell Anakin about their father-son relationship. He knew it was something that needed to be done soon, because at some point it might be seen as too late. So Qui-Gon chose his first mission to do it. The two of them were sent out to a mid-rim planet. There wasn't a whole lot going on, but there was an investigation near a former Jedi outpost on Olega. Qui-Gon and Anakin were sent there to deal with any potential threats. During their trip, where there were no threats, and the investigation was pretty much solved by the locals when the Jedi arrived, Qui-Gon would tell his son the reality of their relationship. It was a little jarring at first, but Anakin then told his father that it was like he always knew. There was something that Anakin couldn't really ever put his finger on, but he believed that there was something special about Qui-Gon. This only confirmed it. What followed was the story of Anakin's mom, Suna. Qui-Gon told the truth, and didn't avoid the difficult details. He didn't say that she was shot in the head, for example, but explained the nature of her death, defending Anakin's life. He filled the story with funny moments, little jokes, and a little laugh about the whole Skywalker name thing. Anakin wasn't too upset. He did wish it was told to him earlier, but the reality is, it didn't matter. Anakin always knew, in a way. Plus, it made sense why Qui-Gon never informed him of their bond. Anakin could be a little bit of a chatterbox, so no reason to have Anakin running around telling the other kids that he was Qui-Gon's son. Everything following the mission would go smoothly. The training of Anakin was very easy for Qui-Gon. Their bond was what made everything so easy for the two of them. They loved each other as father and son did, and Qui-Gon was able to instruct Anakin on how to be a human being inside the Jedi Order. In other words, encourage the attachments he had. Anakin, due to being trained from birth, was very similar to other Jedi. He was a little out there, but nothing like Qui-Gon or Dooku, which was fine. He didn't have to be like them. He was his own individual, but the main point of Qui-Gon's lessons were to not be afraid of his feelings. Skywalker grew through his Padawan years with grace and speed. He excelled very naturally, and with Qui-Gon as his father and his guide, he moved through each aspect of his training with patience. Qui-Gon's instruction with Anakin ended when he turned 15, the youngest Jedi to become a knight in nearly 200 years. Skywalker was acting as most Jedi Masters did by this point, in both prowess with the Force, but also action. He was very mature for his age, very understanding and compassionate. As a Jedi Knight, he understood his role, his emotions, and his place in the galaxy. He and Qui-Gon had spoken about his role as the Chosen One, and Skywalker had no issue with it. He believed it was his responsibility to handle such a title and role with presence and strength. There were no issues when it came to his understanding of his purpose. As his role as a Jedi, Anakin was fairly content as a Jedi. The code didn't speak to him personally, and he subscribed to Qui-Gon's method of teaching and understanding of the code. But despite being raised by Dooku and Qui-Gon, he wasn't quite like them. He was more reserved, more Jedi-like, which was ironic. But this was more so on how he carried himself. As a youngling, he was vibrant with energy, and like previously said, a chatterbox. But as a young adult, he was calm, collected, and observant. He spent most of his time watching other Jedi, seeing their actions, motives, understandings, hearing their thoughts, hopes, fears, and aspirations. Young Skywalker was the perfect Jedi, through and through, which made his father very proud of him. It was better that Anakin was his own individual. Due to the fact that Anakin was a knight, he decided that he would begin his own instruction. His good friend Obi-Wan just became Dooku's apprentice in the year before Anakin became a knight, so he wanted to give himself some extra initiative. There were plenty of things to do around the temple, but to Anakin, there was a desire to instruct. As a Jedi, it was kind of expected, but those expectations were never driving factors. Rather, Anakin wanted to teach because he loved the prospect of teaching. Anakin pondered over it a little bit, and even confided in not just his two instructors and best friend, but the Grand Master. Anakin had fears about becoming a teacher at such a young age. Yoda put to rest these fears. Over the years, he'd seen numerous Jedi instruct from a young age. The student whose record he tied, Vernestra Rwoh, taught a student in her teens. Council Master Mace Windu taught Depa Billaba and joined the High Council before the age of 25. There are many examples of studious Jedi excelling in their younger years and becoming very influential members of the Jedi Order at a young age. There was nothing wrong with it, but Yoda left Anakin with one question: what did he want to gain from instructing? The question was simple, but it was something that made Anakin think. Yoda asked it because many Jedi went out and taught a student right away, because that's what most Jedi did. But the truth is, many of these individuals didn't want to be teachers. Many of them weren't ready to be instructors, and therefore, their students suffered for years with a teacher that didn't want them. If Anakin was committed to instructing for the purpose of helping foster growth from another Jedi, then there would be no issue for him. But if he was going into this due to social pressure, then he might fail. Skywalker meditated on this for a couple of days, and at the end of them, by coincidence, he and Yoda would meet inside the garden of the temple. Yoda asked Anakin if he had come to his decision, and he gave Yoda an elaborate answer, one where he spoke about his meditations, and what came from them. Yoda listened with joy as he watched the young Jedi excitedly run through what the Force revealed to him, and his own intentions too. Yoda smiled and told Anakin to walk with him. Grandmaster and Chosen One walked through the halls of the temple together. Their conversation revolved around the same talking point, the training of another Jedi. Yoda told Anakin about his nervousness with his first student, and even his nervousness with his last, Anakin's good friend, Dooku. Skywalker smiled and listened with excitement, as Yoda led them to a hall of students that just finished their trials. Soon-to-be Jedi Masters and already established Masters were walking in with them. Yoda told Anakin to sit and then spoke to him quietly, informing him that the Force would continue to guide his decisions. If he felt called to instruct one of these students, then let the Force guide him to choosing whoever they might be. Anakin smiled and sat with other future teachers. As they watched the ceremony begin, it wasn't much. It was what Anakin had to do too. But this was a show of the individual youngling's skills and personality. It was about an hour-long session, 10 minutes per student, and the 7 or 8 instructors watched, as 4 of them got up and left when it ended. This wasn't disrespectful, rather, they just didn't feel the call to train any of these individuals. Another Jedi did come in, so luckily there wouldn't be a youngling who wasn't selected today. Anakin and the other instructors told each other who they were going to select before going out to do so. Anakin selected a 12-year-old Twi'lek, and her name was Zenu Neza. She couldn't believe that the Chosen One chose her. All the students were a little on edge when they watched Anakin walk in. He was a legend. They all knew that Yoda would be here too, and they expected that. But someone who breezed through his youngling and Padawan training was unheard of. Many times the younglings would see Anakin walking through the halls and look at him with awe. Sometimes he'd stop and say a couple words of inspiration. Anakin asked Zenu if this selection was alright with her, and her smile could have lit a star. The two of them would go beyond her 10 minutes of introduction and get used to knowing each other. This also meant Anakin would introduce her to Qui Gon, Dooku, and Obi-Wan. When they came up upon the 3 of them, Dooku was pondering the choices of starting a new Jedi Order. This wasn't something that Zenu or Anakin heard, due to them switching conversation upon their arrival. Obi-Wan had been swayed to be a lot more like Qui Gon. No one was like Dooku, but due to Obi-Wan's tight brotherhood with Anakin and his relationship with Dooku as his instructor, he was a lot more rogue than he would have been otherwise. Anakin welcomes Zenu to their little family, and she was very excitable but nervous, as anyone would have been. After their informal little introductions to each other, the new master and apprentice duo would begin their training. Anakin wanted to get a feel for her skills and where she was at mentally. To Skywalker, everything was mentality. Sure, one could be talented, like him, but if someone didn't believe they could, then they never would. It was about belief, perseverance, and strength of mind. Bad days would happen, but they should never overwrite any good day. These lessons were inspired by both Qui-Gon and Anakin's individual philosophies. The next few years of Anakin's instruction of Zenu would be very positive. She was fast on her feet and she was a dedicated learner. During their time together, they would accidentally get stranded out in the Outer Rim territories. During this trip, they'd land on Ratatak, due to a small Jedi presence on the planet. Master Kai Narek was instructing a Dathomiric girl named Asajj Ventress. They were the small presence on the planet. Asajj, by this point, was 13. Master Skywalker and his student would aid the 2 Jedi in freeing the planet from the warlords that controlled the area. Due to the freedom established in the few-month-long side quest of a mission, Master Narek and Asajj would be permitted to return to the Jedi Temple. because there was no real reason for them to stay in the Outer Rim territories. Master Narek planned on bringing all the information he had to the Council and hopefully instate a Jedi outpost or temple on Ratatak. Zenu would learn so much about her master, but also his own interpretation of the Jedi Code during this mission. She found it inspiring to say the least. Anakin was quite the instructor, and she now, at the age of 18, in the year of 37 BBY, was ready to become a Jedi Knight. Anakin saw it. She was ready, strengthened, and prepared. Skywalker almost made her a knight at age 16, 2 years before, but she told him that she didn't want to be alone yet. He did tell her that he would always be here for her, but that wasn't what she meant. Zenu was semi-isolated during her adolescent years, so having a hands-on teacher like Anakin was so very important to her. She knew that she would always have him as an instructor, same with Qui Gon, Dooku, and Obi-Wan as friends, but she believed there was so much more to learn. Her intuition was correct, and thanks to it, she would become a knight with much more experience than she would have had otherwise. Asajj and Narek became close friends with Zenu and Anakin. The friendship between Asajj and Zenu was especially important. They were able to thrive off of their mutual connection, and due to the rank of Master for Anakin Skywalker, he would support Master Narek's suggestion to build a Jedi outpost in the Outer Rim territories. It would be beneficial. The Council reluctantly agreed. Master Sifo Dyas and Eth Koth were sent with Anakin to set up this temple. Master Narek decided to stay on Coruscant simply due to how happy Asajj was here. Master Skywalker at the age of 21 was familiar with Sifo Dyas, but they didn't interact much. It would be through this mission that he would become much more familiar with the 2-year member of the High Council. Sifo was very similar to Dooku. They were both the same age, born in 102 BBY, and lifelong best friends. So it was very easy for Anakin to get himself familiarized with the Jedi Master. Dooku and Obi-Wan would eventually come out with Zenu, Qui-Gon, and Daba B'Laba to investigate the temple being built here. The Council was very iffy about the project, which is why 3 of their members were present. They now had 3 different perspectives on the project itself, and if it would be worth reconsidering their decision to pull away from other temples and outposts around the galaxy. Anakin's decision to push for this temple really encouraged the Council to get the ball moving, and when it was finished, it was outfitted with 20 Jedi, one of which being Shakti, who was very trustworthy to the Council. They called her Marshal of the Ratatak Outpost. She was still training her own students, so she wasn't a master yet, but she was very trusted by the Council. The other Jedi would return to Coruscant after the few months it took for them to set up the outpost. While Dooku had ideas of starting a new Jedi Order, it was one of those things that only came up when he was frustrated. So it was like an empty threat. Like he'd see the Jedi do something stupid, and go on what Anakin liked to refer to as drunk rambling about how he should start his own Jedi Order. He wasn't actually drunk, it was just comparable to the type of thing you might see from a crowd in a bar when the home team loses. Though, because Dooku had Obi-Wan, and was so close with Qui-Gon, Anakin, Sifo, and Zenu, he never really found any interest in the approaches made by Palpatine, but he did tell his friends about it. Young Master Skywalker was making moves for the Jedi Order, and Dooku believed it would be Qui-Gon's son that would make the greatest change for the Jedi. Who cares about the senator from Naboo? This was not the same case for Master Sifo Dyas though. He was getting involved with a wealthy banker named Hego Damas II, and he was going to try and convince Sifo Dyas to do something. Anakin wasn't really sure what, but he told Sifo Dyas that bankers were not to be trusted. Sifo was fearful of something. He had a vision, something he refused to tell Skywalker about. It was a vision, and Anakin wasn't even given any details. He just tried to help the Jedi Master. He was very on edge too. Sifo just convinced Anakin to at the very least meet the banker, and so he agreed. When Anakin met Hego, the vibes were off. The Sith were incredibly good about hiding their identity. It's how they avoided the Jedi for a millennium. Plus, why would Anakin ever assume it was a Sith? He had no reason to assume that Hego was allied with the forces of evil, but he could at the very least infer that he wasn't good company, similar to how he sensed that the bond between him and Qui-Gon was very connected. But Sifo Dyas, despite being wise and very intelligent, wasn't seeing the lie. Anakin didn't know what the lie was, but he was worried that Sifo would go down the wrong path. So in an effort to make sure Sifo didn't, he decided to conduct an investigation himself. Sifo and Anakin built up a strong bond while on Ratatak, but he wasn't going to listen to the adolescent Jedi Master. Anakin had much to learn, and he wasn't a council member, so he didn't know the inner workings. The paranoia of Sifo Dyas was infecting his judgment, and Skywalker decided that in an attempt to protect Sifo from making a bad decision, he would bring his student in to help him. Anakin and Zanu, who was still just a Jedi Knight, went out and started following Hego. In an effort to keep themselves cloaked, they used a Force anomaly to protect their presence. Anakin again had no belief that Hego was a Sith, but there was enough off about him that Skywalker believed he was something else. Due to his and Zanu's friendship with Asajj, they were more familiarized with other religions of Force users around the galaxy. Skywalker hypothesized that Hego was a sage, and whoever he was working with was trying to do political damage to the Jedi. Their intention was to make Sifo Dyas do something a Jedi shouldn't, make it public knowledge, and then turn the people against the Order. He wasn't far off with this hypothesis either. Anakin and Zanu didn't care for the political influence of the Jedi Order, but they did care about what little restraints the Jedi had. If this did serious political damage, then the Jedi could be limited in their ability to help people around the galaxy. Master and former apprentice moved around for weeks, trailing the Molinist banker from location to location. Hego never interacted with anyone outside of business partners, and because Anakin was monitoring the comms, this was more of an illegal action than not. There wasn't anything that warranted them conducting this investigation, and now it looked like the Jedi were greedy with power. Zanu suggested that they try and stop Master Sifo Dyas or convince Dooku to talk to him, and Anakin agreed. Before they took their setup down, a Naboo starship pulled down to Megiddo, where they had been. Skywalker stopped, putting his hand in front of his apprentice and telling her to stop. Wait, before turning the comms off. Out from the ship walked a Republic Senator, Palpatine. What was he doing here? The two Jedi moved from their hidden location into the building and watched over the talk. For the last several weeks, Hego hadn't interacted with many politicians. It wasn't unheard of for corporate masterminds to intertwine their fingers with political scapegoats, but this was something else. Hego avoided all contact with any politicians during their investigation, so why would he be interacting with Palpatine now, especially if there was never a call made to him? The Jedi listened in, and the conversation got weirder. Zanu whispered to Anakin, asking him if Palpatine was the senator that approached Dooku a little while back. Anakin thought and then nodded his head. They crept around for hours, keeping a record going, and then there was a switch in the tone. Their political and financial conversation switched, and their voices became eerie, unlike anything in the talk leading to this. They spoke to each other about the plan with Sifo Dyas. Palpatine was dying to know. They needed a Jedi to be responsible for this plan, and Plagueis told a student to be patient. They would have their project soon. The Lord crossed his arms and asked how Maul's instruction was going. Palpatine said he was finer than any specimen should have been, though the young Sith pleaded with his master to allow him the opportunity to train Maul to his full potential. Plagueis shot him down immediately, telling Palpatine that assassins were meant for nothing more than that, assassinations, instructing him to return to Coruscant, remain quiet and focus on the plan. Valorum was bound to mess up soon, and they would have their victory. Palpatine smiled and told him that the Viceroy of the Trade Federation was as gullible as the Jedi. Anakin and Zanu snuck around, but the two Sith faded out of earshot. Anakin gave the device back to his student and told her to go back to the temple and inform the council. He was turning his tracker on, and he was going to sneak back with Palpatine. Zanu had a look of concern on her face, but he put his hand on her shoulder and told her to trust her skills. Be silent, get to the ship, and do not look back. He smiled warmly and told her that they would reunite when these sages were dealt with. She nodded her head and moved limberly out of the vents and to the ship, departing from Megiddo. Anakin moved to the Naboo starship Palpatine arrived on, and found a place to hide. When he entered the ship, he realized that these were not just sages or political adversaries. They were Sith. Palpatine's lightsabers were held on a pedestal on his bedstand. Anakin used the Force to feel the darkness from them, before eventually finding his hiding spot and staying silent. Zanu got to the temple before Anakin even left Megiddo. She ran in without warning or asking. The counselors were confused when she walked in, and Ki-Adi-Mundi demanded to know why she broke in without their permission. She told them that she had a recording. She caught her breath as she told them that banker Hego Damas II and Senator Palpatine had bad intentions for the Jedi. She also revealed that Anakin's tracker, showing that he was still on Megiddo, he was in hyperspace, having just left the system, was going to be tracking them to wherever the sage hideout was. The council reacted a bit slowly, but they questioned Sifo Dyas and he revealed the truth of his actions, apologizing and informing them that he was unaware of the plans made by Hego and Palpatine. The council then motioned, dispatching Masters Depa Billaba and Saesee Tiin to gather at Masters Dooku and Jinn to go and meet with Anakin wherever he landed. If there were other, more evil sages, then they needed to be dealt with. The Council, like Anakin, didn't believe the Sith were a viable threat. Their religion died centuries before Yoda was born. If anything, this was something new, a threat never seen, one that needed to be eradicated before its effects hurt the galaxy. If war and political manipulation were their intentions, then they needed to be stopped. With Balaba, Tin, Dooku, and Jinn preparing to meet up with Anakin upon his arrival to Coruscant, Zanu was removed from the Council chambers as Yoda, Windu, Plo, Yaddle, and Yarael Poof prepared to move for Megiddo. Anakin patiently waited in hyperspace. He had been meditating since Zanu left Megiddo. He was currently learning the lost art of battle meditation, and so he was trying to prepare himself for what he assumed would be battle. He knew Zanu would get to the Council, but he was unsure if they would send anyone to assist him, so he needed to be ready. Upon his arrival to Plagueis' lair on Coruscant, he watched Palpatine exit the ship in dark robes, ones not worn by a senator. He was a true Sith. Anakin kept an eye on Palpatine and eventually snuck out to follow him. Skywalker was trained well. He could handle whatever came his way. He couldn't contact backup because that would alert the Sith to him being here, and he didn't intend on engaging with them. He was only here to confirm everything he saw and heard. When he got into the Sith lair, he saw Maul on his knees, and above him was Palpatine, praising his student and telling him that soon they would reveal themselves. Soon there would be victory. Maul nodded his head, telling Palpatine that he wished to learn more, and the Sith apprentice told his assassin that in due time he would. The Republic would be his, and they would have successfully made the Jedi look like fools. When the time came, he'd be trained to his full potential. Maul stopped focusing on Sidious as he turned his head. Palpatine asked Maul what it was, and he looked up, showing his disgustingly yellow teeth and telling his master it was prey. He got to his feet and moved over, igniting his double-bladed lightsaber. Anakin was still cloaking his presence, but Maul could feel something shift. It was like he smelled something different. Skywalker could see Maul approaching, and so he walked out from behind a pillar and ignited his blue lightsaber. Maul hissed, looking back to Palpatine, who told him to kill the Jedi, make the Sith proud. Maul launched at Anakin, using a Sith howl as Skywalker defended the strike. He watched Maul try and use every move he was taught against him, but as Skywalker defended with ease, he could see how animalistic Maul's attacks were. He was fighting with so little preparation. Anakin was able to dynamically take control over the fight, breaking Maul's blade into two and using the Force to hoist him up into the air, holding him over his head without choking him. Skywalker looked at Sidious and asked who he was. Palpatine scowled, disappointed in Maul, but truthfully, it was Plagueis' fault. Maul could have beaten any Jedi if he was trained to his full potential. Sidious ignited two lightsabers and leapt at Anakin, similarly to how Maul did, who threw Maul across the chambers with the Force before defending himself. All the while, the Council was approaching Megiddo. They went in with one intention: destroy whatever religious curse this was and erase it from the galaxy. Not very Jedi-like, but they were here to do it. They would be successful in their mission, landing and surprising Plagueis while he was in the middle of a Sith ritual. There was no hiding his activities. He would defend himself and take a Jedi with him, before being struck down. On Coruscant, Skywalker shoved Palpatine back. While Anakin didn't use the same form as Dooku, he was very similar. He used a combination of Qui Gon's aggression but Dooku's finesse, and it made him a very deadly opponent, one that Sidious couldn't seem to break past. He didn't have any clue that his master was dying on the other side of the galaxy. All he knew is it was him versus Skywalker. The Jedi Master bashed forward, kicking Palpatine's blades up before slipping under him to avoid a strike from Maul, who had returned. The Jedi smiled arrogantly as he focused in on the fight at hand. He defended every strike coming at him as he pulled a pillar over and crushed Maul's leg. The Sith assassin cried out in agony as he tried to get out from under the pillar. Palpatine didn't care. He pressed forward as Skywalker defended himself, calling out Sidious for being a horrid master, which only made him angrier. Anakin slid out of the way, knowing he couldn't kill a defenseless Maul, so he ripped one of Palpatine's blades out of his hands and launched it across the chambers into another pillar, toppling it over and allowing gravity to decide Maul's fate. Palpatine's lightsaber fell into a darkened corner of the room, as Anakin doubled back. The Jedi assigned to assist him ran into the sound of the lightsabers clashing away. Palpatine was trying to focus in and Anakin beat his other lightsaber out of his hands, so Palpatine channeled every ounce of power in the Force that he could. Skywalker's lightsaber was thrown from his hands with electricity. The Jedi ran in to see the Force storm surrounding the Sith apprentice and Chosen One, as Anakin raised his hands to defend himself from the lightning. He took in the power of the Dark Lord, absorbing each burst of electricity as he focused all of the energy from the Sith back onto his own body. Palpatine heaved in pain as he was melted by the power of the dark side. Skywalker shoved all the way back towards Palpatine and watched Sidious fall victim to his very own loyalty, the dark side. the Sith were forever gone. As Anakin looked over, he saw his father run in first. Masters Saesee, Deppa, and Dooku watched as Qui-Gon ran over to his apprentice. The Jedi Masters spread out to investigate as Qui-Gon cupped his son's face and asked if he was alright. Anakin smiled sincerely and nodded his head, telling his father that he did what he was meant to do. He brought balance to the Force like his father always knew he would. Qui-Gon embraced Anakin and told him that his mother would have been so proud, just as proud as he was. What followed the destruction of the Sith was the burial of Jedi Master Yarael Poof, who fell victim to Darth Plagueis. It was revealed that the Sith were completely wiped out. Sifo Dyas would face adequate punishments for not addressing the Council on his issues, but he wouldn't be outraged. He would see where he went wrong and stay true to the Jedi way. Master Skywalker would be given Master Poo's position on the High Council, which he would accept with jubilee, but also satisfaction and serenity. Master Skywalker's beloved student Zanu would go to teach her own student after he joined the Council, whereas Dooku and Sifo Dyas would find their joy and rebirth of their adoration in the Jedi in the new temples around the galaxy. Master Skywalker, as he had done with the outpost on Rat Attack, would push the Order back out to the galaxy. As he didn't care for politics, he never got involved in that side of the business. Instead, his focus was leading the Jedi back out into the galaxy. What also followed was a Jedi investigation into the Trade Federation, due to what was said between Plagueis and Sidious on Megiddo. The Trade Federation would lose their license to trade anywhere in the galaxy, which would effectively collapse their corrupt empire. But with its destruction, it allowed other local businesses to rise in their shadow of corruption. The Republic itself would take centuries to get back to a golden era, but the Jedi Order needed only one strong generation. Father and son would maintain their strong relationship over the years. While Anakin would be very, very well versed in strong and healthy emotional attachments, he never felt the desire to leave the Order or even do as his father did. Despite Anakin not being quite the maverick that his father was, it would be Jinn's instruction and fatherhood that would lead the Jedi Order into a new era, one that benefited everyone in the galaxy. And that, my friends, is a wholesome PP story. Special thanks to all of our patrons: Benjamin Wells, Alexandria Reese, The Beginning and End, M, Jango Fett Clone, Nick 5098, INTJ Recluse, Ben Ingram, The Big Red Pure Mark, Diamond Constant, Darth Nemesis, Lord Tibbs, CC2024, Galvin Gaming, Tristan Mandalore, Sir Realm 1767, Darth Revan, Granddaddy Ban, Laliand, Sky Guy, Penguin, Cullen Rooney, Shark Midori, RJ38, Nick, Michael Erlanger, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Weewu 670, Annika Stank Runner, CT7567, Toaster Oven, Oz of Oz, Darth Nox, The Eternal Padawan, Joshua Tem, Johnny Naguin, Sansa Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Lord Cali, Galaxy 66, Man Studios, Anakin 003, Lord Draken, Fortress Legacy Star Wars, Airbus, Rex the Wolf, The Man with the First Names, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing for supporting the channel. Smash that like button. Let's talk about this story. It was a lot of fun to have Anakin have this father that was a Jedi, but this father being Qui-Gon. I think it really allowed for him to develop more naturally, but I also didn't want Anakin to be Qui-Gon or Dooku's level of disrespectful to the Order. I think in a weird way, being so familiarized from it as an adolescent would allow him to approach it kind of neutrally, where he's like, I like that, but I kind of like doing what the Jedi have taught me so far. And so he'd find this nice little balance in the middle. I thought it was also kind of cool making Anakin older than Obi-Wan by like a couple months, kind of just an interesting change. But it's also so fun working in this pre-prequel era because there's so much more room to maneuver around with the story and add new characters like Zanu. And yeah, so I hope you all enjoyed. I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.